It's good to be with everybody this afternoon. I'm going to try to be brief because I know our next speaker and the insect side of things is I think maybe greater challenge to us in hemp than weeds are, as much as it pains me to say that, because I think weeds are really important. But I'll try to just jump right in here. When we talk about weed control in most crops, the first thing that comes to mind is herbicide options. And we really just don't have very many of those in hemp. There are some EPA registered herbicides, or maybe better to call these bioherbicides. So this isn't a complete list, but there's acetic acid, vinegar, which is acetic acid, some middle length chain fatty acids, and others. And so all these basically function as desiccants, right? You're just going to burn green leaves. And so you have to get very good coverage, and you have to spray it on very small weeds because these herbicides don't move around. They're contact type materials. So if you do that, you can get good control with these products, but they're also non-selective. And so if you spray these over top of the hemp plants are also going to respond similarly, right? You're going to have some necrotic leaves and stuff, which is not what we want. So these have limited utility. They also, I guess the other point I would make is that they don't have any soil residual activity like some of our conventional herbicides have. So if you're looking for duration of weed control, that's not going to happen. These are quickly degraded in the environment, which can be a good thing. So there's no conventional herbicides, although there are, I think, some coming, and we'll get to that. The bulk of my experience in hemp has been in looking at herbicide tolerance with it. So we've been doing that since 2017. And this is a few commonly used herbicides, at least when you're talking like corn and soybeans, maybe some other crops, and how hemp has responded to those in terms of this is visible necrosis about 4 weeks or 27 days after application to transplanted hemp, right? So we sprayed these herbicides, transplanted into those beds, and then came back and looked at this and basically see where we've identified some candidate herbicides here. We're less than 20% injury across the board across 2 locations this past year. So I think we're kind of narrowing in on some herbicides and some prospects. I will say some of these herbicides have resulted in greater injury in other seasons, but we're kind of narrowing in there. Same thing for post-emergence. So these were applied again to transplanted hemp grown for CBD or floral production, sprayed over the top of these, and you see less than 5% injury here. 7 days after treatment in the maroon bars from all these treatments, and then and you see that recovery or even less injury 28 days after treatment there. And so, we're getting into the range of we found some herbicides that can work for us, both pre-emergence and post-emergence in at least the transplanted system. The problem is these aren't labeled in these crops yet, or in hemp yet. So there is a process for doing that in minor use crops. The IR4 is a USDA supported interregional 4 project. And basically they just compile residue data and tolerance data and submit products to the EPA if the makers or registrants, the companies support those products. So Sonalan HFP, which is a pre-emergence residual herbicide controlling small seeded grasses and broadleaf weeds, was submitted late last year. It's about a 15-month timeline registration. And so right now we think, we'll probably get that at some point in 2022. So not going to help us this year. Kind of the same thing for Assure 2 or Quizalofop. This is a post-emergence grass-only herbicide. So it kills grasses, but is safe to broadleaf plants, which would include hemp. That was selected as a priority to move forward at the IR4's 2020 food use workshop. So that's going to move forward with, they're going to gather residue data. And I think they've got enough tolerance data right now on hand, and we'll be looking to submit a registration package to the EPA probably later this year, so it would be my expectation. So maybe some conventional herbicides on the market. A couple of the others we found safe, you see crossed out there, are ones that the registrant, the company, isn't supporting for one reason or another at this time. So with herbicides, I guess the other thing we sometimes need to be aware of is herbicide carryover, right? So when a herbicide is applied to a field, potentially last year or maybe last winter or fall, if that herbicide persists in the soil, it can injure, hemp if we go to hemp. And so this is a list compiled by my colleague at University of Wisconsin on what the labels restrict herbicide rotation to, right? So if you applied one of these herbicides, for example, Fusilade there has a 1 month carryover restriction. Same thing with Select Max. And so you're not supposed to plant hemp in those fields for 1 month after application of that herbicide. So some of these like Permit or Pursuit, and Pursuit's not uncommon in some of our soybean crops, that's got a 40-month rotation restriction. I think some of these, like Pursuit, are probably going to persist pretty long time and could result in injury to the hemp. But most of what this is a residue perspective. And so you might not see injury to the hemp, but there might be herbicide residue in that soil that could be taken up in the hemp plant. So something to consider. I'll post that link here when I get done presenting in the chat box if you want to take a closer look at it. There's also been some good work, initial work done by my colleague, Matt Catelli, Dr. Catelli at Clemson University, on what is the weed-free period. So this was done for CBD production. And this is really looking at how long do we need to keep that crop weed-free to maximize yield, or in this case, maximize the acceptable bud weight. So you see here, they've got 6 different varieties there. That therapy one didn't perform well, kind of regardless of how long it was kept weed-free. And you see, I guess, quite a bit of variability here too. But I think across the board, when you look at this, if we're keeping this crop weed-free for 4 weeks, we're probably going to get maximize our yield for that crop in that year. Certainly varied by variety, and this, some more work I know Matt's doing right now to get a better grasp on this and get rid of some of this variability here.
Michael, just to clarify, that's a transplant system?
That is, yep. That was grown yet like CBD transplanted style system. Good question. Sorry, I didn't make that clear.
And those are all bedded, or do you know kind of how the field management relates to this?
Yeah, I'll post this link too. It's there in the bottom of the slide. I know he's got that information in that extension publication there. So yeah, that's all good things to be aware of there. I want to say that was bedded as a plastic culture, but I have to click on that link. So our current recommendations, and if you heard me talk before, is kind of the same thing we've been saying, just because there continues to be little information about management hemp. I will say we've been submitting grants and trying to get funding to do more of this work, and it just haven't been successful for whatever reason. So where we are is basically we definitely need to start weed free. Even if you go out there and there's just tiny little seedlings, maybe the size of a dime, and especially if you're seeding that crop, those might have a 2-3 week head start on the hemp. And while it doesn't look like much, it can be pretty substantial. So start weed free, I think, is critical, and that's something we could do through tillage or some of these broad spectrum, even the biopesticide herbicide options. And then just do what you're comfortable with. If that's mowing between plastic culture, or if you're familiar with the tobacco growing system and you have that equipment to do so, then I think that's a winning strategy as well. And that's what a lot of people have found. We've summarized the weed management work, as well as some of the other speakers with their respective pest management disciplines in this publication. And I'm sure that'll be mentioned again here today. But with that, I'll just wrap up and say we've got some of this herbicide testing stuff on our website, and I'm happy to answer any questions now or by email later if they come to you then. So.